Craig, welcome to the FincTank.
Thank you
for coming on board. So there's a few reasons I wanted you specifically, and you're one of the first people that I asked, and it's because of the way your career has kind of weaved its way through technology right from the beginning. But before we get into it, I wanted to have a chat to you and explain to maybe the audience or whoever's listening exactly what you do right now.
Okay. So at the moment, I work for a company called PagoNxt. PagoNxt is a subsidiary of Santander, 100% wholly owned. PagoNxt has been set up to be more of like a fintech within the Santander world.
Yep.
So think of us like a conglomerate of companies,
Yep.
All within a payment space. So we do things like merchant acquiring, FX, cross-border. Links is one of our products, which is a big new kind of fraud anti-money laundering system.
Cool.
We have that as well. So we have about, I think the last time I looked, around about 47 to 50 companies within the PagoNxt brand.
Right.
And my role sits at the holding company. So we have
Okay.
a parent company within that.
Yep.
Yeah. So you're kind of flip-flopping between different regulations. Yeah, like we've got the FCA, the EBA, the Bank of Spain. So yeah, it's very, very interesting. And then you have the language barriers as well.
Yes, I was just about to ask that. And how do you deal with that?
Luckily, I've got a really good team of people that are really patient with me. So I tend to put on my kind of slower English voice to talk to them and try and explain things. But I'm learning Spanish as well for the past 2 years.
Do you want to try some out now?
No.
But it must be really endearing and comforting to your team that you are trying to do that. I mean, when you're working across different jurisdictions, it can sometimes find, I think, the big bad UK is coming to tell you what to do. So the fact you're taking time, because culture is language and language is culture. So the fact you're taking time probably is quite helpful.
I think they appreciate it. Well, I hope they appreciate it anyway.
So actually, it's a kind of an easy way into my next point. I really wanted to sort of explore how you first initially got into banking, because you've had an unusual baptism by fire when you first went in there.
Yep.
But let's go right back. Where are you from? Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Luton. So anybody that knows Luton, it's not the best. It's not the best.
Oh, come on. We love Luton. It's got an airport.
Well, you know now, I think with Luton Rising, there goes a shout out to my hometown.
Luton Rising?
Yeah, that's the new kind of, I guess, slogan that they've got because they need to rebuild the town.
Sounds like a terrible rap group.
And, like our careers teachers never really spoke about what you want to do. It's just like, well, you're good at maths, you can go into banking, or you're good at this, you can go into that.
Yeah.
There wasn't much encouragement to go to sixth form.
Yeah.
And there wasn't much encouragement really to go on to university. Mm-hmm. I took a look at the sixth form, didn't like it.
Yep.
Walked around and thought, why do I want to do another 2 years in a school?
Yeah.
When I'd had 5 interviews with all the top banks in the UK at that time, and all of them had offered me jobs.
Pause.
Yes.
How did you get the interviews?
I just wrote to them.
You said, hi, I want a job.
Yeah. And the first one was really interesting because I wrote to Lloyd's.
Yeah.
I said, here's my predicted grades. I'd like a job.
And what kind of jobs were you applying for? Obviously, it wasn't financial crime because this is, I'm not going to offend you by saying a long time ago.
Pre financial crime stuff.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It was before anyone really gave a tutti frutti.
Sure.
So what were well, I know because I've looked at your LinkedIn, but just for other people, what were those kind of roles targeting?
General banking.
Yeah.
Right? It was, if you weren't coming in on an A-level program, you were basically starting right at the bottom. So I didn't really have any idea. I thought I'd be working behind a till.
Was it like an apprenticeship scheme?
No, it was full-time employment, not an apprenticeship scheme.
Yeah.
I think things like youth development or youth training scheme was on at that time, but that was for people that had struggled with some of their exams. So I came in as like bottom of the rung, entry level.
Let's just
banker.
get you in and see where we fit.
So I picked Barclays.
Okay, great choice.
2 reasons. One is that the week before, a friend of mine had gone into Barclays and had interviews as well and told me what they were going to ask. So I went in prepared, as prepared can be, and knew the questions they were going to ask.
It's not cheating, I suppose, but
well, no, but they said, no, they're going to take you around. They're going to show you like where the ATMs are. They're going to show you this. Then this guy's going to ask you this type of question. And then he's going to ask you guys if you've got any questions.
Yeah.
And I was prepared.
It's interesting, talking to someone like yourself who started their career not too long ago, but it's different. You couldn't write into a bank these days and get a job.
No.
There's too many barriers to entry at times to get into banking, and they are trying to fix it. But when I'm telling these stories, and I'm sure there's people listening to this podcast who are maybe thinking about starting a career in financial crime, I guess the takeaway for them would be that it has changed. but that sort of proactiveness is still very much valued. You still see those LinkedIn posts of people with those sandwich boards out in Canary Wharf wanting a job, right? And they do still work.
Yep.
So if we can hop, skip and a jump to a role that really interested me, I think, correct me, 2000, you were doing biometrics?
Yes.
Come on, like how?
So I'd kind of bumbled around in Barclays. I'd followed the traditional route.
Yeah.
Floor 1, floor 2. And then I went to floor 3. And I went to floor 4, which was the regional office. But by then we'd moved out. Okay. And I was doing technology. Yeah. So I'd always liked technology.
And when you say technology, what do you mean?
So listen, this is way back, right?
Pen and paper.
Yeah. Well, it was, like we went into our regional office. We had one machine that did emails. That was it. So my first job at the regional office was to kind of build databases. Yeah. Before really we'd done anything with databases. Okay. What were the databases focused on? It's all on risk. Yeah. So we had like a risk function within the regional office, and we were gathering information on bad and doubtful debts. Oh, so it was more around that than around like bad actors and things. Yeah. So it was nothing to do with kind of where I am now, but it was all around collecting this information. Yeah. So I was like the database administrator building it, and I was showing some aptitude in IT and whatever. And I went to join the fledgling IT team. Yeah. Which was 3 of us, and we would do things like... The division, we'd call that now. Yes. There was 3 of us for the whole region. Yeah. And the first job within the IT team was to roll out Windows 3.1, which was like the real first commercial. And I bet there was a huge investment, a lot of pressure behind that. Massive. Yeah. I mean, we had stacks of computers in the office. We were replicating computers. We were joining them to networks. It was stuff that you must have felt like really futuristic, like Mr. like on the cusp of technology at that time. It was the first time I felt I wasn't doing banking. Yeah. Yeah. And it felt good because, even though I'd moved into banking, I was like, I'm not sure I really like this. And so there was a bunch of us doing that. I ended up being like the head of that particular function. And how old were you? Oh, that would have been like 24. A baby. Yeah. I was not doing that at 24. Yeah. But it was like really good fun. And we were installing these computers all across the region that we were in. And then I remember seeing a job in Barclaycard, and it was for something called Emerging Markets Groups. Yeah. And I phoned this guy, and he said, "Look, we do all this cool stuff." And I'm like, "What?" Yeah. He says, "Well, we're doing internet banking, we're doing biometrics, we're doing chip and pin, we're doing this." And I was like, "Oh, that just sounds amazing." So that's how I got into biometrics, and it was just the most amazing 2 years in Barclaycard because we were working on so much cutting edge stuff. What year was it? So that would have been like 96 onwards. So, wow. So I moved on to a project. It was called Endorse. Yeah. And it sounds really simple now, but it was take a chip and pin card, which we just launched, take a fingerprint, map the 2 things together. And then if you go online and you want to sign a loan agreement or whatever, you put your chip and pin card into a reader. So it reads it out, and then you put your fingerprint onto a scanner, maps the 2 things, and say, you never have to sign a document again. What was the reaction to the public? Because obviously we're all quite used to biometrics now. And back then in the mid-90s to the early 2000s, there was still a bit of like, the big brother's watching me. I don't want you to have that information, surveillance culture. Oh, yes. So we were doing I remember once we were doing a trial with, I think it was with the post office. Yeah. And I can't remember what it was. It was to sign something. I think it was to sign, we were doing it with farmers. I know it was with farmers. Oh, yeah, really keen for technology farmers. So it was some kind of agricultural form that they had to fill in, and the post office would help us. And it's like, Craig, you need to go to this farmer in Norfolk because his computer's not working. I was like, oh. Right, okay. So I drove like for 2.5 hours to this farm in the middle of nowhere, like rocked up in my boss's car. Like it was a really nice Rover, whatever, gleaming next to a tractor. And then the farmer takes me into a garage, locks the door behind me and says, you need to sort that expletive thing out. I want that software off my machine. He goes, you've broken my PC. I'm like, oh. So if you want to know kind of what the reaction was at that time, it was... the unknown scares people, particularly if it's something like that that's really frustrating someone. They just want it off. They don't want to. Yep. They don't want to be the test dummies. Yeah. And so what was the focus? So you went on, you did the fingerprints, and then what other kind of projects were you working on? So within that particular area was, so we launched the first shopping mall in the UK, online shopping mall. Yeah. So called Barclay Square. So we had, retailers like John Lewis, Debenhams, Argos were on there.
What a cool idea.
We were looking at things like internet fridges.
Sorry, pardon me.
So today, today you'll go into Curry's and you'll see a screen on the fridge. And then as you take food out.
Yeah.
We were looking at that back in 96, 98, like internet fridges and how could we embed banking into those?
And how did these ideas come about? Like, was it like a working group or was it just throwing like darts at a board?
We had some really, really clever people. So we had a guy called Roger Alexander, who was like like the lead of the unit, Steve Collins, who was like my boss. Yeah. Mick Linnell was like really, really kind of clever guys who then managed to kind of use the Barclays brand or the Barclaycard brand because we were quite innovative. We were the cool, trendy part of Barclays at the time. So we could use that part of our brand to say, look, we want to do things differently. Microsoft, Compaq, IBM, Dell.
What did you end up launching out of all of that?
Well, we didn't. Barclays Square launched.
Yes.
So Barclays Square was launched and that was really good. And then like all technology, it just gets taken over and over.
Yeah. It's like an early Amazon, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The endorsed product, it proved the concept and it actually went on to be a spin-off business for Barclays.
Oh, cool.
Called Identris, which was like business to business commerce.
Yep.
So we opened up, Barclays opened up.
That's awesome.
Another area. And we did some other little bits and pieces. So we were still doing chip and pin. We were still doing encryption. But Barclays then took the decision to close the department down.
What drove that decision?
I think it was budget.
Yeah.
I think, you've got this bunch of, there was probably like 60 of us.
Yeah.
Guys, it was the first place I'd ever worked in Barclays where you didn't have to wear a tie. Ooh. Right? We had different carpet to everybody else. Right, so it was fintechy, right?
But I mean, it actually is a really good point that the environment does kind of alight things in people. So it's
Yeah. I mean, to me, it was like, I don't have to wear a tie. This is so cool.
You must have felt real like cool guy walking through.
I'd wear a polo shirt to work with emerging markets.
I'm just imagining you walking through the lobby and everyone turning their head and being like, who's there?
It was kind of like that. It was like, you're the cool guys that sit up on floor 4.
The jocks of Barclays.
Yeah. Our particular project was then mothballed, right? Because they said, actually, there's some value in this, but we don't know what to do with it. So I think John Varley was like the head of retail bank at the moment, or that time. He goes, I don't know what to do with this. So
I'm surprised they didn't package up and sell it as a product to other people.
They tried to.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So they offered us to like the tech companies that we were dealing with, like the Microsofts, the Dells, the IBMs, and they couldn't strike the right deal. So for about 6 months, we were mothballed in the basement of Barclaycard, right? Literally underneath the restaurant.
I'm imagining like wheelchair races and like...
it was kind of like that. You were sitting there going, so what's going on? But we have to keep going out and doing demos to these people that are potentially going to buy us.
Yeah, of course.
And after about 3 months, Steve and the small group of us that were there, because we just kept the core of us, we went, there's got to be something else. Yeah. And Steve knew of this guy called Harry Tacker, who's an American Indian guy. Made his money from lots and lots of dealings all over the world. And Harry had a consultancy company that dealt with biometrics. Okay. And we just put the two of us together. And so we all took redundancy at that time. Right. So it's a big jump to go.
Of course.
I'm in this safe environment with Barclays. I could go anywhere.
And to this guy who's like an enigma.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd never met Harry before, but I had so much faith and trust in Steve. Yes. I was like, I want to be part of this. This is going to be cool.
How cool to have a leader like that.
Yeah. He's an amazing guy. So really, really nice. So he kind of sold the idea and it was like, we're going to go and try and do this ourselves. And so for the next 3 months that we were employed by Barclays, while we were trying to work this out, we were finding places to go work. Yeah. So we found an old vicarage in Northampton. Right? So we're having that.
What a clash of the two worlds, right?
I know.
It's,
we're going to do this. We'd managed to convince the biometrics lead that we had to come with us.
Okay. Big jump as well for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're all kind of buying into this. This is what we want to do. Yeah. And so we spent 3 months building the business. Like I did everything from painting Steve's office to installing the BT kind of like phone network.
Real camaraderie kind of like.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we had to get on and try and sell things. Yep. So for 18 months, we were trying to develop products with biometrics. Like, can you open a door? So things you see now on like Ring cameras and all that kind of stuff.
Which is super common, right?
Yeah, yeah. The biometrics that's behind the passport scheme now. Bill, who was our lead biometrics guy, went on to work on that scheme.
Oh, no way.
So we were heading in the right
You
direction.
had all the right ingredients.
But we were super, super early on this. And we were trying to find what was the product that was going to help us launch. Yeah.
Okay. So you're 3 months in, you've painted the office, you've got the...
We done everything, and then we had to go and sell. I'm not a sales guy.
You'd be good though.
Well, I had to be a sales guy. So we were like going to like government meetings, trying to kind of do stuff. So we had government contacts from Barclays.
Yes, I was just going to ask how you got those meetings.
Yeah. But then we were using Harry's contacts in the US. We were going to trade shows. We were putting up the trade stands.
It really was like bootstrap kind of.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And we managed to get kind of towards the end of the time there, we managed to get a contract with a housing association, 2 housing associations.
In the States?
In the States, yeah. So we were in Las Vegas, which was fantastic. And we did the deal in Las Vegas.
Oh, viva Las Vegas,
But it was fun. Yeah, it was fun. Doing a deal in a penthouse in the Venetian.
Oh, come on, Asif. Really?
We were, yeah. So we kind of signed this deal and we were doing this pilot. And so it was, if you wanted housing benefit in California, you would go to the housing benefit office.
Yeah.
Housing benefit in Nevada, you would go to the housing benefit office. And what they were finding was people were jumping over the border and registering in both and getting double housing benefit. Our solution, use fingerprints to identify yourself when you go in.
Yeah.
So that's what we were running. We were installing this solution, which was going to save US government loads and loads of money. So we were like,
we've made it.
We've made it. This is where we're going. And then I remember taking a call from Steve one day saying, the money's gone. I was like, oh, what do you mean the money's gone?
Yeah.
And it's like, problems in the States, our investors are kind of, because Harry was like the main investor. The money's gone. We don't know. It's like the new finance guy said, we've got no money. And we're like, what do you mean?
So you'd hired like a new CFO or something and he'd come in and...
He was appointed by the other investors.
Well, fair.
Yeah. So they were kind of running it and, we couldn't get any information out of this guy. Like Steve tried his hardest. Harry didn't know what was going on. And
how old's Harry, by the way? I'm just trying to picture him in my brain.
Harry.
At this time, was he young or old?
So Harry passed away a couple of years ago. He was 70 years old. So when that would be about 30. So he's a bit like mid-40s.
Okay, fine.
I mean, he was...
well established.
If you're looking at characters, right?
I wish I'd met him.
He was the most charismatic guy you could ever meet.
Yeah.
He was chain smoking, whiskey swilling, Harley Davidson riding.
Oh, made for Vegas.
Yeah, Indian guy. He knew everybody, could charm the pants off anybody.
Oh, cool.
And then suddenly we've gone from this to like we've got nothing. What on earth is going on?
Yep.
I remember being on the phone to my dad. I'm like
panicking.
Dad, what am I going to do? We've just bought a house. We're doing this. What are we doing?
Oh, jeez.
And I don't know the ins and outs of it, but there was some kind of bribery and corruption going on.
How foreboding into your new career.
I know at the time you kind of think like the FBI apparently were involved and all this kind of stuff. And Harry was going like, I can't tell you what's going on, but these guys are gonna get prosecuted, right? But unfortunately, we're no more.
What a seismic shift from the safe world of UK banking.
Yes.
And you're suddenly in this Las Vegas environment, and like bribery and corruption. And so what was it? Just within a week cease trading and...
Yeah, we kind of, I think we bumbled on for like 6 to 8 weeks.
Right.
Harry dipped his hand into his own pocket. I think Steve may have done as well.
Oh,
to kind of help us out. But then it came to a point where it was like, look, we have to go.
But that does sound like one of those really... it sounds like you grew up in the role. You're buying a house and you're forging your own kind of career. Those roles are really important to people, I think.
Oh, no, it's massive. Yeah, massive. But then kind of you have to get real.
Yep.
So, I think we had a baby, 2-year-old at the time.
Oh, my goodness.
So I was just looking for a job.
Of course.
Just looking for a job. And I'd applied for loads of things. Banking wasn't an option for whatever reason. I can't remember why. So,
I'm just never going back.
Probably I'm like, I'm done with banking. I'm not doing it. So I ended up...
You probably thought you were too cool for banking now.
Probably, yeah. Well, yeah. And then like reality hits home because
one's too cool for banking.
I get an offer from Northampton Borough Council. So it's like...
Oh.
So they wanted a business development manager in their IT department. And I'm like, what business can you develop in a council?
Wow.
Because you'd gone from a massive bank to this, what would now be like a fintechy type company with all the money and Vegas and this, to the council where people had been there for life.
how am I going to change anything here?
It was. And it was like, this is so different. I've gone from money to this to...
But it's a different type of creativity you find in yourself, I think, when you've not got any money and you've not got the budgets. You know, a lot of the innovation that comes with the fintechs are because they are bare bones.
Yeah. And so we had to fight for the budget, though. So everything was about, how do you prove this is going to save money?
But ain't that the best skill set you could have in banking?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where they're constantly, especially now, you know, if you want anything signed off or you want anything done, where's the benefit, where's the cost, and how quickly can you get it done?
Exactly, yeah. And this being public money as well, not only did you have to convince your boss in the council, you then had to take it to the councillors.
Who didn't want to spend money. Just to sort of anchor it in what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Well, I have conversations a lot with like, what makes a good MLRO, and it is the advisory piece. This is what we need to do. This is how we do it. And this is the plan forward. It is a sales job or a stakeholder relationship type job.
Massively.
Yep. And I find MLRs who have come strictly from policy, or they've come from a background which is less interactive with stakeholders, struggle a little bit with the convincing people who don't necessarily care about fin crime to care about fin crime.
Yeah.
So it's I can understand why that was so formative. Like, it's a real university of how to sell things and push things. So
No, absolutely. And 95% of my job now is people.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, I understand the legislation, the regulations and this, but it's telling stories. It's getting people to understand why they need you.
Absolutely.
And why, if they do something wrong, here's the consequences.
Yeah.
So
I say it all the time. I say the MLRO is the CEO of fin crime. Like, the reason that you have a head of sanctions or head of ABC, et cetera, underneath you is because you don't necessarily need, well, you don't, but you don't necessarily have to be the expert in these, but you need to know how to support those functions and strategize those functions and invest in them. Yeah,
exactly.
So, okay, so we've spent some time at the council.
Yes.
You've paid your dues.
Yes.
And what was the reason for leaving, or what kind of prompted that?
Money.
Yeah.
So, like in the council, you don't get promoted.
No, you never become the VP of...
Yeah. You go up like a couple of points every year and you get like an extra few £100.
Yeah.
And, like friends I'd made back in Barclays said, look, we're doing this stuff with data and we need somebody to manage programs and projects. We need somebody with like a service management mindset. Here's the theme now, right? So I went and had an interview with who was going to be my boss.
Yeah.
He had just arrived in from America. So Barclaycard at that time brought a load of guys in from the US.
And he was American?
He was American. He had a guy called Adrian Pasankin, who's like one of my like dear friends now. And he came and he was jet lagged. Worst interview ever. Worst interview ever. And he didn't like me. I didn't like him.
No, whereabouts in the States is he from?
He's in the middle somewhere.
I wish you were going to say New York, and he was just like, get out of here.
No, he's... and I remember him going out and speaking to the guy that proposed me for the role, recommended me for the role. Said, I don't like him. And so this guy was...
no one like you? Come on now.
But I think because he was jet lagged, I was kind of giving across this, I don't like you either, so let's just get this opened up with.
Yeah.
You asked me to... and I think I was like...
It's a respect thing though, right?
Yeah, but I think I was being a bit entitled as well, saying, you asked me to come in for this. I didn't apply for it. Show me the courtesy of being interested in me.
Well, I mean, that could go for all interviews, I think.
But I didn't realise he was jet lagged. Anyway, the guy that recommended me, a good friend, basically did a great job with Adrian and said, look, give Craig another chance.
He's nice, I promise.
Give him another chance. So we had another interview where I was happier and Adrian wasn't jet lagged, and we got like a house on fire, and then that was it.
Oh, cool.
So I went in to do data warehousing.
Ooh, sexy.
Right. Didn't know what it was.
What is that? I don't know.
I know. It's like big warehouses of data was the best way to describe it.
Oh, no, that's very in vogue now.
Yeah. But back then it wasn't, right?
No.
We had a terabyte of data, and people were going, that's so much data. Yeah, we were trying to target and decide where we were going to use our marketing money.
Yeah.
So we were using
based
data to do that.
Yeah.
So decision science was our, decision science back then. You go, what on earth is that?
What a great mix of your, like, I know you weren't sales, but kind of that customer need focus and your tech.
Yeah.
Right? It's a really nice marriage of the two.
Yeah, because the role then morphed into, because it was like service project management, it was like, well, my customers are now these really, really intelligent decision science guys. I mean, and when I say really intelligent, I mean like quantum kind of physics type guys, sitting there, and they would have like even the CEO of Barclays,
Yeah.
with a guy called Keith, who became the CEO of Barclays, had these big servers under his desk because he was a coder. He was a data science guy.
So it was still really more on the tech and the data and the problem solving for you at this stage in your career.
At this stage, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is kind of where it starts to take me into to FinCrime, because we're now starting to work on big data, and my area becomes part of the wider Barclaycard technology. I was dealing with software providers, and so suddenly I became their procurement type thing. So dealing with SaaS software, who are huge.
And when was this? What year?
So this would have been probably 2004, 2005.
Still early days to be doing this kind of stuff, hey?
Yeah. And, you know, SaaS were a big company,
yeah,
right?
of course, yeah.
And we were looking at how do we use SaaS then to predict models. You know, it's all model management stuff.
How incredible that you were adding that feather to your cap, you know, which has turned into a massive part of the world now. But there probably weren't a lot of specialists that were doing it. Was it really learning on the job?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we were the decision science guys back then. They were hard coders.
Yeah.
Right. So you would see their code and you'd look at it and go, it's like the Matrix. I don't understand any of that.
Like literally like the movie.
It was, yeah. And then we were working with SaaS on the services side, looking at new technology they were bringing out, which was more GUI led. Right?
GUI.
Graphic user interface.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
I'm sitting here thinking SaaS, like, I'm sassy.
iPhone stuff, right?
Yeah, right. Okay. It's quite interesting, you know, because financial crime, we forget about, like, sorry, just to bring it into what you are doing. A lot of the more successful MLROs and businesses are always constantly considering the impact on customer.
Yep.
So the way their app is being used or all this kind of stuff, you know, it's interesting that you're already having that mindset so early on. It was always anchored in the user.
Yeah, I think that just was driven into me probably from the early days of banking.
Yeah.
Right? You're there to serve.
I like that.
And I think it's my background anyway. It's like, you know, being part of, going right back, you know, but being part of rugby is like you're part of a team.
Yes.
Right. So I've always been part of a team. I like being part of a team.
Yeah.
I don't like being the individual. And you're there to do a job, and you're always there to kind of serve. And banking was you're there to serve your customers.
Yeah.
So, you know, whatever I do now, it's always like, who's my customers? How do I serve them?
But I wonder if that low ego comes from your background as well, coming from working class. You know, it's not all about you. It's about like
it could do. Yeah, it could do, absolutely.
Interesting. That was me being a bit diary of a CEO for us. Hope it worked. Okay, and so you were saying that it's leading into sort of FinCrime from here.
Yeah, so I was doing like big data projects.
Yeah.
And we'd gone across, and so we brought some more American guys in to help us. So there was a guy called Paul Fabara, who is now I think he's Chief Risk Officer of Visa.
Oh, you should introduce me.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy. You know, really, I learned a lot from Paul. He was the COO at the time of Barclaycard.
Can I just I've got a question. Why did they want to bring so many Americans in? Not against Americans, but what were they doing that we weren't doing?
So particularly in the States, the first, I guess, American guys that came over they'd worked on things like subprime lending.
Oh, yeah. That wasn't good of them.
But they'd used the marketing techniques for subprime lending.
I see.
So, and Barclays needed to do something.
Yes, they did, yeah. Okay, that's cool.
So that's why the first kind of tranche came across. And then you start looking at the more successful kind of credit card companies and whatever. So we were dipping into the market and saying, actually, to be a successful credit card company, we need the best. Yeah. So Paul had come across. Paul was the COO, amazing guy. I ended up working for him. He's in financial crime. But we brought in some people that he'd worked with before. So I went on a recruitment trip to the States.
Fun.
Where I came across a really, really great guy called Keith Lippert. Keith comes across. Keith then goes to work for Paul. And then Paul is asked to then move to Barclays head office to head up sanctions program.
My favourite part of FinCrime.
Yeah. So a massive program of sanctions uplift that needed to be done. And Paul had been asked to come in and run that project. So Paul wasn't a FinCrime expert, and said, I think you'd be great at this thing like sanction screening. I went, what is it? And I remember sitting there in the canteen or the restaurant in Barclays in head office and saying, okay, tell me about what sanction screening is. And he gave me this long explanation. I went, okay, so it's basically just data in, data out, and you match it. He went, yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, to summarize, yeah.
And he said, well, that's the best that anyone's ever summarized it. I went, okay, when do
Yeah.
I start? And it's probably the only time in my career where I was, because it was going to be like a leap into the unknown. I had no idea what this was. And I was moving away from Northampton.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't know, it's a project, etc. I was like really ballsy and said, this is what I want, salary wise. I want a director role. I want this as a salary.
And was it a big jump? Do you mind me asking?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
Was
yeah.
it a bit of an FU kind of, if you want me?
It was, yeah. It was
Yeah.
like, you
There are
know,
times in your career where you are the belle of the ball.
yeah, I
Yeah.
could have stayed at Barclaycard.
Yeah.
You know, I was happy there. I was doing some really good stuff. It was really interesting. This was like complete diversion, but probably sometimes for my own, not for my own good. I'm too nice and I don't push
Yeah.
myself. And at this time, it's like, I need to push myself. I need to push myself to get that director role.
Were you pooping your pants a bit?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I sat in there. Thankfully, they agreed.
Admired it, yeah.
And I joined, you know, at that time, it was a department called ORIP.
What a sexy name.
I know. I think it was Operational Regulatory Implementation Program.
ORIP.
ORIP.
Sounds like a cartoon character.
Yeah. But it was the whole thing was set out to make sure that we put the best sanction screening system in,
Yeah.
and that we had the best operations team, and that we had the best oversight team.
I'm curious, were you building or using vendors for the sanction screening?
So we were using a vendor called Datanomic,
No, I've never heard of them.
which then got bought out by Oracle.
Okay.
So your Oracle screening system now
Yeah.
was Datanomic. So we were like right at the cutting edge
Little
of
guinea pigs for them.
working
Yeah.
with Datanomic. So, you know, and we had to also go and sell, collectively, and this was mainly done by like the project leads, had to go out to each of the Barclays areas and say, we're going to put this sanction screening system in. You don't have a choice.
And how, in those days, because you know how we've got the sanction screening teams and they run the alerts and they look at the false positive. How was it structured back then?
So back then, it was basically everybody did their own thing. So,
Crikey.
so it wasn't a central sanction screening team.
Yeah.
You know, everybody would run their own.
Would they set their own parameters?
Pretty much at the time. So we were trying to change that as well.
A bit of a Wild West, isn't it?
Yeah. So the project team, first of all, I had to go and sell the idea of we're going to put this new screening system in.
And was it selling to the branch managers or to like the heads?
Like the heads of countries.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like, not only are we going to put this in, you're going to pay for it as well.
Out of your very lean budget already.
Correct.
Because the banks just had a massive fine.
Yeah.
And,
And you're going to do it to these standards.
yeah. And we're going to check.
Yeah. And we're going to check and we're going to have oversight of you and yeah, we're going to
But
do
it must
this.
also be a little bit like the heavy footing from head office. Was there much pushback or people kind of like, well, it's
Huge
the
amount
start
of
time?
pushback. Huge amount. Yeah. So again, you're having to go in there with your people kind of hat on.
I imagine, did you go and do that? Because I imagine you would have been quite good at the...
I did bits as I kind of got
like a
more into
roadshowy
it.
kind of-
Yeah, as I got more into it. So I kind of went into to start with on list management. So we were using WorldCheck at the time.
Yep.
And I think it's fair to say, I think even my friends now at WorldCheck would say they had a pretty good deal with Barclays, right? And we weren't really managing them as a supplier.
Yeah.
And so my first job was to say, okay, well, let's go in and then let's make sure that you're delivering your lists on time to the quality that we expect.
Well, if no one knows what you're meant to be doing, it is kind of easy to,
Yeah.
be as not as good as you could be.
Exactly, yeah. So we, straight away I kind of brought in, we're going to check your lists every day. When I find a problem on your list, you're going to pay me a credit on my
Oh, no way.
on my service.
And how often were they getting checked before? Do you know, like roughly?
Never.
Oh, my Lord.
So this was
It
completely
was
new.
so inaccurate. Like, what's the point of having it?
And we found loads. Right? And I remember, working with my team, and it was a very small team. There was 3 of us. And we were looking at this and we were like, we found another error. That's another,
Yes.
however much, we found another error. But it kind of drove that accountability back into WorldCheck, saying, okay, now we need to.
I mean, the credit thing, because they have to agree to it because they have to be confident in their product. So they have to say, oh, there'll be none. Like, there'll be very few. But lo and behold.
Yeah, so we
Probably
we
got a
would find
month's worth.
errors. But then through that, you then create that relationship with WorldCheck. We say, look, we can help. We want to help you. We want to make sure this is the best product for us.
But within because your list management, I imagine, could be pretty much replicated across your other clients. So you're helping like the data integrity for them, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And that's
Should be paying you.
kind of, that's how we were, it's kind of how we were selling it, right, as well. We were trying to negotiate the contract down, obviously, to get it as cheap as possible. So we were saying, look, we're going to do these checks. There's a credit back to us when we find an error. We're also doing work for you.
Yeah.
So
You should have someone doing this.
And we also want the right of audit. So we were building this sanctions program, and we had to get it right because you have to come out of the the cease and desist order.
Was there a lot of pressure on you in that
Huge
time?
amount of pressure.
I am curious. I am always curious. There's a lot of fines that go on in banking and things. What it must feel like being that person in the teams where it's very public. Your friends and family possibly know about it, are talking about it, and then you've got the CEO who's got all eyes on you.
Yeah.
Was it sort of late nights, early mornings, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Some weekends we went down as well. We had a control room.
Yeah.
We built this really, really amazing control room, which you now probably see in like incident management rooms, like with screens everywhere, and we could.
That's exactly what I was picturing. Yeah.
Yeah. And we would sit there and we could track like, okay, as the list being loaded here, as the list being loaded there.
We've got much pressure, eh?
Because we knew how to get it right, but we still had to go and sell it. We still had to go out and tell the stories about.
It's also it's a conduct thing as well at that stage. People hadn't really been beholden to sanctions and screening and lists and things. It was kind of like you say, it was just an afterthought.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that kind of job then morphed into, again, with like financial crime teams you see today, we bounce around, right?
Yeah.
From risk to compliance to legal to dum.
Yeah.
And we'd bounced into legal at that time.
Wow.
Which was strange.
Very strange.
Which was really strange.
And was it a cost center thing or an actual thing?
A bit of both.
Wow.
Yeah, a bit of both.
Weird.
But so we then became legal and compliance operations. We were part of the team. We could get in, and you can go and sit with the lawyers and say, explain to me what this is. Explain to me why this is important. Explain to me this. Yeah.
But that's so crucial. There's a lot of people that do design these systems that are a little bit too on the tech side, and they don't have the why. And the why is the foundation of the whole thing.
Yeah. Really trying to understand
How
that.
lucky for you.
Yeah, I guess, looking back, like you get so much exposure to this stuff.
It's the beauty of joining a bigger bank though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I often say, I'm lucky enough to have kind of mentored some people through my career, and they kind of say, well, what do you need? And I say, well, actually, you need this breadth.
Yes.
And I talk about it like the T shape.
Yeah.
I said, you need some like depth on some areas. So that's your stem of the T. So mine at that time was technology. So I'm good at technology. I know what I'm doing, but I'm good at all these other things that go across the top.
I like that.
And said, but sometimes you need to kind of go on these other journeys. So now my depth is now financial crime.
Yes. And tech.
And tech. Yeah. I can dip back into tech when I want to, but you kind of can switch it on and off.
Yeah.
So I think that really helped, just that depth and that breadth.
It's a really good way of putting it, everyone. T. I might title this episode T. Here's the T.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so you were in the legal function, and then what came next?
So at that time, then there was a bit of a seismic shift within Barclays. So there was I think it was called the Souts report. So it was looking into the conduct of Barclays and the compliance conduct. So a big kind of thing that happened. And Barclays had decided at that time to change the compliance function. And so brought in Hector Sanz from the FCA.
Yep.
And
he was one of the first FCA into banking hires, wasn't he?
Was,
Yeah. I remember that. I remember hearing of it, and everyone was talking about his pay rise because they're scoundrels.
Yeah.
But it was a massive thing, and it was very much like, look who we're getting. We're taking this very seriously.
Correct. And that's exactly what it was. It was like, we're going to change the function. We've seen the report. We need to change the culture. And it was the right thing to do. And it's like, Hector will be the guy to lead us to do this.
Hard to measure, hard to do.
Yeah. So Hector then, of course, like when you get any kind of management change, wanted to bring his own people in. So he brought in a guy called Tim Laura. Tim was a lawyer from the States. So, as a head of financial crime for a UK bank, we brought in an American, which was kind of, like raising a few eyebrows. But, I didn't know Tim really at that time, but I was there kind of helping. I was working more at that time on more of a HR project.
Is this chief of staff role that you had?
It was just before.
Yeah.
So what we decided and what Hector and the management team said is, look, if you're going to do compliance right, you need to bring the compliance function together. We've got so many silos. Right? So we are going to form one financial crime team. We're going to form one compliance team. We're going to form one this, one that. So I was kind of working as part of this bigger project, this transformation project on the HR side, and saying, okay, how do I bring in all these financial crime professionals under one financial crime umbrella?
And make it make sense. And
exactly, yeah. And we found there was like 700 people doing financial crime second line things in Barclays.
Holy moly.
Exactly. People hadn't really thought about that.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
What a cost base.
Exactly, yeah. So we're looking at that. And then Tim was coming in, and I was like working with Tim saying, look, this is going to be your new function.
Yeah.
This is going to be this. How do you want it done? And I got to know the guy so well.
Oh, okay.
He's probably the biggest influence to where I am right now, because Tim not only had like the I guess the knowledge and the background and the education, but his people skills are second to none. They're absolutely second to none. He was an actor before he became a lawyer.
Oh, that's a good skill.
He could charm anybody, right? He could put anybody at ease. His first day in the job at Barclays in New York, I remember him telling me this. He had to go and see the New York Fed.
Scary in itself.
By himself.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to know who this guy was. Yeah. And he said, I walked into the room. I'm on one side of the table. The other side of the table, there's like 8, 10 Fed.
Scary looking.
People.
Yeah.
Literally like that. Yeah. Me against them.
Probably there to scare him into thinking we're the
Correct.
Fed. Yeah.
And he said, I knew one of the people. So he said, I walked around the table, got her hand, pulled her around the other side of the table, sat her down, and now it's 9-2. So I went, you did that? I said, yeah. So what was the reaction? He said, broke the ice.
But this is, I bet it changed the whole trajectory of the conversation,
It did.
right? But that just shows so much emotional intelligence. Like being able to read the room that would land well.
And that was his key strength.
Yeah.
Yeah. So his key strength was the emotional intelligence.
Yes.
And he needed help with how to navigate Barclays.
Yeah.
So again, I was quite pushy at this point because I thought, I want to help him. I really like the guy. I want to learn from him. I was coming to the end of the HR project, and I said, look, should we go for a drink tonight? I want to ask you something. So we went for a drink, and I said, look, I know you're going to bring your chief of staff across from the US. I can do it.
I love that. I can do it. Not I want it. No, I can do it.
I said, I can do it. I said, you're going to bring in your chief of staff who's going to have to learn Barclays, learn everything, learn the people.
The UK, the nuances of which
I said, I can accelerate you through this. I said, there's stuff I don't know, but I'm going to learn from you, but I can do this. Yeah. And he looked at me and went, okay, let's do it.
But it is really important, actually. The language you use when you're pitching for that kind of stuff is I can do it is undercurrented by I'll solve this problem for you.
Yep.
Leave it with me.
Yep.
I've got you.
And it's exactly how he took it.
Yeah. And so you moved in, because when I saw that on your LinkedIn, I admit I probably thought, oh, that sounds quite HR. And then you read through what the points are and it's quite culture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for him, it was almost like his number two.
Yes.
But his real number two was the deputy MLRO.
Of course, yeah. For that
particular piece, I was his number two for everything else.
For the change the bank.
Correct. Yeah. Like, how are we going to make this function different? How are we going to sell the story?
Yeah.
I traveled for 2 years with him. So because he was US, he had to be in the UK every other week. That's what the FCA wanted. How
exhausting for the poor man.
Yeah. So he was pinging across to the UK. And then he would then go back to the US and then I would follow him to the US. So for 2 years, I was like, bang, bang, bang.
That must have been so tough. You had a young family then as well. That must have been really tough.
And it wasn't until now, my kids now grown up and that kind of stuff. We were talking about saying actually that had a massive effect on them. I didn't realize how much I missed.
But I mean, I'll give you your dues. Just how it was back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have working from home and flexi time.
No, and we had to do it. We had to make the money. I was enjoying it as well. Yeah, that was part of it.
You were successful and good at your job.
Yes.
Which is enjoyable.
Exactly, yeah.
The very nuanced and softer side, not softer, but the different skills for an MLRO, you're in a training ground for it.
Yes, absolutely.
And I bet osmosisly learning all the fin crime stuff.
No, absolutely, yeah. It's like, I could sit with him over a meal when I was in the US and say, what was that today? I don't understand that. What's the Patriot Act? What's this? What's that? Just that kind of work with him and how he dealt with the regulators as well. And
what did you kind of take away from that?
It's knowing people.
Yeah.
Right? So when he would land in London, his first hour, so he had a flat, so he'd go home, shower, so come in around about 10 to 11, no meetings. What he would do is walk the floor. And he'd walk the floor and he knew everybody's name. Mm-hmm. And he knew what he talked about last time with them. He knew about their family. I bring that now, right? Yeah. So I remember as I moved on in the career and started doing some more, more of the MLRO type stuff, I would take stuff to my guys in the US, my team in the US, and I would say, here's some stuff from the UK that you might not have had before.
What a talking point for the team as well, right? Like it creates that conversation, that dialogue.
Yeah.
Oh, what's this? And suddenly you're having conversations with your team a little bit on the side of work. Okay. And so you the chief of staff role, and then it seems like then it kind of just went,
It did, yeah. So there was another change of management. So Tim had gone back, and we had just literally appointed at the time, Tim's deputy.
oh, okay.
Geraldine Lawler.
Love.
Right. So I had the pleasure of having to phone Ger up and say, hey, welcome to Barclays. By the way, Tim's left the organization.
Yeah.
She was like,
Great.
I won't say what she said to me on the phone, but yeah, she was like, okay, fine. So
Wow.
Ger came in, and immediately you kind of saw like an upping of the game in technical knowledge. She's just fantastic.
And lovely.
And lovely. Yeah, lovely with it. But she was so focused when she came in because we'd got an FCA enforcement letter.
I was about to say, heavy is the crown for her because she's come in with shit to do.
Yeah. And she's gone, okay, I need to read this. So straight away she came in and said, I need to change the program. And I'm looking at her, and I'll be the first to admit, I'm going, you're criticizing Tim's program.
Egos here going, hey, we've done this. Blood, sweat and tears have gone into this. Yeah.
And, Geraldine was like, no, I know what I need to do and I need to go on and do it. And so she was really laser focused on doing that.
Probably why they hired her, right? Because
yeah, absolutely. And I think Tim knew it as well. Tim knew that he needed somebody strong in the UK.
Yeah.
And he picked exactly the right person. Geraldine was just like accelerated into that head of FCC role. So then, Geraldine had to bring in her people.
Yeah.
And I was still doing chief of staff for her at the time. And we weren't quite hitting it off. I think Geraldine would be quite happy for me to say that, because she needed something different from her chief of staff that Tim needed. She needed more technical expertise. She needed more of this. And we had an open conversation after that. And then fate kind of happens again, where Alan Clare, at the time, who was head of Barclaycard financial crime, went on to become head of UK retail banking financial crime, and the Barclaycard role was free. I went in to see Geraldine and said I could do the job.
I can do the job.
It's like, I know the business, I know the people. That's 90% of what I need to do. And I can then rely upon the team to help me get up to speed on what the financial crime side is.
And so that role there, was that a pure, the true blue head of financial crime? Like, it wasn't so grounded in the tech and it wasn't so grounded in the culture. It was the whole
advisory. Yeah, it's like advisory, oversight, kind of what.
Did you feel capable, or were you learning on the job?
Massive imposter syndrome as I walked in.
So were there a lot of sleepless nights kind of thinking?
Yeah, my stress level was like through the roof.
How did you upskill?
I relied upon my team. Massively relied upon my team.
And how big was the team? Was it massive then?
No. So it's like 6 of us, I think, 6 or 7 of us, but really seasoned people. So a lady called Ruth Hutchinson is now at the ICA. So learned loads from Ruth. Ruth and I kind of worked together.
Can I ask something around them gaining a leader who didn't know as much as them in their certain disciplines? Because I get this question a lot. How did they respond to having someone who couldn't really explain to them, the rule book?
Not great to begin with.
Of course.
Honestly.
There's probably some of them that went for the job.
Yeah. And I think I even remember interviewing with like who was going to be my main stakeholder at the time. And he said, look, I'm not convinced it's you.
Oh.
I was like, I totally get that. I totally get that. But Geraldine was a big supporter of me.
How did you convince them?
I think it was more around the business side and like, look, I don't know this, but I can learn it. And it was the I can again. I can do this. I proved I can do this. I've got a track record of doing this. Yeah. And my job was to make sure that they were happy and that we were explaining that to them.
Yeah.
And I knew that if I could understand the subject matter, I might not know the nuances of it.
Yeah.
I could at least tell a story to get them to where they needed to be, and I would support my team in telling that story.
Hey, that's the skill set of an MLRO. And how do you train the sales teams?
That was difficult, right? Again, because of the Barclaycard kind of ethos at the time. And it was like, it was a young company and trying to do it. And we're saying, look, we're trying to up your standards to where you need to be. There was 2 things that happened. One was, we had the enforcement notice over us. So we had a financial crime program that Geraldine had created, right? And then the genius thing that she'd done was that she'd gone across every accountable executive in Barclays and said, this is your problem, not mine. And here's the consequences of what's going to happen if you don't do it. I remember in one area that, who was the kind of first line oversight, they'd had no form of financial crime training, none. So there was no like financial crime training. So I'd just gone through ICA at the time. And I said, look, this would really help you.
Yeah.
Go do the ICA. You'll get where we're coming from. So they not only did the ICA, but then I would say to them, come and sit with us in a lunch. We'll do a lunch and learn session. Let's go through what I'd learned on the course.
So valuable though.
Yep.
Have you purposely sought out the roles that you've had, or how have they kind of come to you?
So yes and no, in a way. So the Barclay card one just evolved.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just Barclay card in the UK, it was Barclay card US, Spain, Portugal, Germany.
Yeah,
the whole kind of thing. So that just exploded, which was great. So
what a training ground. Training wheels are off.
Yeah, exactly. It's like any time consumer lending, we were doing that. So I kind of did an interim role for Barclays in Dublin.
Yeah.
But in there, it was like, okay, so we've lost our head of FCC. We need somebody to step in. I said, I can do that.
Which product were you covering then?
So that was all of kind of Barclays Dublin. So there would have been
like retail or wholesale?
No, it's corporate banking, wholesale banking.
Great.
No, I had no idea about it.
No, but it is. It's a sexy part.
Yeah, but different regs.
Yeah.
Different products.
Different risks. Different way of looking at customers. Different way of screening. Whole thing.
For me, it was like, how do I, because I'd become comfortable in the Barclay card role.
Well, and actually, truth be told, there's not a lot of instances where you will get a MLRO role outside of your product wheelhouse.
Correct.
They tend to like, if I had your CV from Barclay card, I wouldn't necessarily put you in for a wholesale role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for me, that role was like, okay, look, it's interim. So one, I'm helping the group.
Yeah.
They're going to do that. Two, I'm going to learn loads from this. Three, there's some travel, which is great. I want to go to Dublin. And I want to meet the new team. And so I think 6 months I did that. But that was me actively going out and saying, I can do that because I want to learn. I want to learn more.
Yeah.
And I learned so much there, and I think within 3 months I was in front of the Irish regulator explaining to them what we were doing and helping our CCO and creating board training decks and this and the other and working with the team and helping the team kind of get more up to speed with what they're doing. So it was a mixture of like the same as and then looking. And then the Barclay card role shrunk. And so I was looking at other roles and we had a problem in transaction monitoring. Well, actually, no, at that time we had a problem in electronic surveillance. One of the FCC management team had moved across into that kind of whole area surveillance. So a guy called Matt Bardsley.
Yeah. I don't know, but
And Matt needed some help, right? So I was like, okay, let's go and do it. And this is completely different. E-com surveillance and targeted surveillance is so different from what I've done before.
And what skill sets from you did that pull on?
So to begin with, it was all, again, the relationship, the personal skills, because I had no idea, right?
Yeah.
I'd not been in investment banking or anything like that
It's a
before.
real theme in your career, isn't it? Like that you're the, dare I say 30% can do the job and you learn on the job 70%.
Yeah.
Very ballsy.
Yeah, and that for me was like, I'm taking a massive leap of faith in myself going across here because I don't know the team. All of my team was based in Glasgow.
Can I ask a question that only recruiters would ask? When you went from being an MLRO into that role, I know the MLRO, you get danger pay, all this kind of stuff. Did you take a pay cut to go and do that job?
Just sideways.
Sideways, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
I hadn't looked outside Barclays because I was like, I was in the sphere of Barclays still.
I mean, they were serving you well though, hey? Like it wasn't like you were stagnating or...
No, and I was on like the DMD kind of promotion path and all that kind of stuff.
More than that, really cool roles, really interesting, like sprinkles of new bits to your career all the way through.
And this one drew me there because when it was something new, it was a new team to try and understand. I had a challenge of COVID at the time because I started this role during COVID. So how was I going to work with my team in Glasgow where I physically was never going to meet them?
Yes. And it's not like now everyone's used to, virtual working and home working. It was the whole education piece and people probably didn't have enough laptops or enough,
It was all of that.
Chaos,
and then I have to, one, kind of say, hey, it's me.
Yeah.
Two, how are we going to then build this team virtually? But the other pull was technology because it was pulling me back to technology because we needed to up the technology there. So could we put in a new e-com surveillance thing? Could we use telephone, AI type telephone things to look at different pitches in traders' voices and look for stress and look for this? And
but that is also early doors, again, with the early adaptation from you.
Yeah. And it was like putting on like friends that were in consultancies and saying, you've got anything like this? Have you got this? Went back to my SaaS days with the SaaS guys and saying, what are you doing in e-com surveillance?
But how awesome that you've got that network that not a lot of people coming into that role would have, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think I was about 6 months in.
Yeah.
And our head of transaction monitoring decided to go and join another bank.
Rude.
Which I remember saying to her, thanks so much.
I'll just keep swimming like this.
Yeah, and I'm busy doing my job. And then before I knew it, was like, could you do that as well? And I was like, really? Okay, fine.
And TM in itself is a big old chunky beast.
I know. So I'm like, how?
Or did you know at that time? I don't know.
I knew it was going to be a problem. Yeah, I knew it was big.
But I mean, you've done the screening and the lists all way back when. It's not so different.
No, it was, we had a team, they had a team at that time, which was really good, right? Technically really good, needed some leadership again. So that's kind of where I went in. But then there's a specific project we needed to run. So that was my first foray into it, was to take that project under my wing. Yeah. And do like a proper TM risk assessment. So we were doing like this piece of work to really kind of push out to the businesses again. This is back to the Tim day or the Geraldine days, actually. Your accountability, your products, your accountability, your risk, right? We're going to document all that. And then my accountability to make sure I'm putting the rules into the system to then manage your risk.
But also I know there's a downside to that, but very empowering as a leader for someone to say, this is you and your problem and your solution. You go and do it. There's too many leaders that don't. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a strong leadership style from her, as we all know she has.
Yeah, it was just fantastic. And that kind of took me into it as well, which is, and I still hold it today, right? It's like, this is your risk, not my risk. This is your risk and your accountability.
Yeah. And do you do that with your teams as well? Is that how you kind of run them?
Yeah, I mean, I get them to say, I trust everybody in there. And it's like, I trust the decisions they're making. But it's your decision that you're making. When you bring stuff to me, it's because you need some help or you're not sure about what to do.
You really just need to talk it through,
And you need to talk it through. But I trust you to have those conversations. I trust you to go and speak to, there's no ego of mine that says I need to go and talk to the CEO. If you're good enough to go and talk to the CEO, you go talk to the CEO.
But it's also nurturing future talent, right? Like if you become an MLRO and you've never spoken to a C-suite, you're not going to be a good MLRO. So if you've got juniors underneath you, you can give them that visibility and exposure. That's the beauty of really long-term planning for your functions. I know it's not always possible sometimes. Okay, so you did the transaction monitoring hellhole. No, I'm kidding.
Yes.
And then did Pago come knocking on your door, or how did that come about?
So Pago, I wasn't looking. I was on this kind of MD program. Yeah. I think at that time I'd been told, hey, take a ticket number, your ticket number 10 in the line for MDs. I'm like, really?
Cool.
I was like, and I said, how many people get the ticket every year? And it's like, well, maybe it's 2 or 3.
I know. Do you know what? I can go into a big spiel about that, but we'll talk about,
And I was like, okay, that's not for me. So that kind of piqued my interest. And when somebody came knocking, and the PagoNxt guys, I went, who on earth are PagoNxt? I've got no idea. Who are they? And then I'd kind of done this research, found, the Santander. Yeah. Okay. I know one of the guys at Santander, a guy called Ned Conway. Yeah. Who used to work with me in Barclays. So I picked up the phone to Ned and said, what do you think? Yeah. And he went, oh, you'd be great. You'd be great. I said, really? So I trust you. Yeah. He goes, no, you're what they need.
You are, yeah.
He said, they're looking for somebody that's got payments experience, that's got leadership experience, that's worked in FCC.
The tech focused.
Has got the tech focus and can speak Spanish. I went,
see.
Yeah. So I'm like, you're looking, and so I said, look, I'll have the conversations. And I remember sitting there and I said, I think you're looking for a unicorn. Yeah. I said, unicorns are really hard to find.
I mean, the language was the horn on the unicorn.
Yeah. So I said, I can do this, but I can't. Yeah. It's on the reverse of what I said. I can't do this, but we'll make it work. Yeah. And so I had really positive conversations with my boss Ava, with my boss Miguel, Carolina, as well as from she was head of FCC for Santander at the time, and Ned and the guys, and they all done via video. So I'm kind of building up this amazing idea of this like fintechy company.
Oh, I know what comes next.
Going, okay, we've got this, and
we're going to be in a big glass building.
We're going to build this thing, and I probably hadn't realized how at the start of the journey PagoNxt was. So I accepted anyway. First day, 3 years ago. So our office is in London, they're in Triton Square in the Santander headquarters. And I go to reception, I'm here to join PagoNxt, and they went, who?
No, like, you've got the wrong building, actually.
It's guy Miguel. I was like, nope. haven't got him on the list. I'm like, I think I've got the wrong building. I'm phoning Miguel saying, hey, where are you? And he said, I'm dropping my kids off at school, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay.
Okay.
He goes, go and get a coffee. And
We'll pick up.
one of my colleagues now, Stefano, will come and pick you up in an hour. He's on his way in. And so I've got in my mind, like, fintech. I'm going to go in. There's going to be MacBooks everywhere.
Yeah.
There's going to be this, that, and the other.
There's a pool table over there.
Exactly. And we went into I guess it was like an office that was being renovated with random chairs and desks scattered around and maybe one screen and a couple of like seating areas. And I was like, well, where's everybody else?
Yeah, are they coming? Or?
Are they coming? And Stefano went, no, everybody's in Madrid. I said, that's the question I didn't ask. It's like, where is it?
It was on the tip of my tongue, that question. Yeah, right.
I said, so where's my team?
Yeah.
I said, no, they're in Madrid and then the rest of them are across the world.
Yeah.
I didn't ask that question either.
But you would think that would be quite forthcoming. I can understand why you didn't ask the question.
I think part of it was...
it was their normal, so they didn't think to highlight it.
Correct. And I was so used to working virtually that I don't think it even come to my mind that was going to be it. And I just remember sitting there on day one going, what have I done? What have I done? Yeah.
But it's almost a replica of going back to when you were working, in the Vegas environment.
It felt so much like that.
If they'd pulled an Emma Rowe from somewhere else who was used to all the bells and the whistles, I'm sure you were at Barclays, but you'd also had that environment where it was kind of painting walls and connecting with BT.
Yeah, and I took something from Alan Clare when I met with... So Alan and I live quite close to each other.
Oh, okay, cute.
And so we went for a coffee about 2 weeks before I joined PagoNxt. And he said, can I give you one piece of advice? And I said, of course, I respect the guy so much. He said, don't run.
Yeah.
I said, don't run. He said, you're going to want to run because you're going to see all this stuff that where you've been at Barclays, you've done it before, you want to accelerate it through. What you're telling me is this is quite a new company. You can't run.
Yeah.
Because you're going to disappoint yourself. You're going to get frustrated.
Run out the road.
Yeah. And I've kept that in my mind in the 3 years, which is like, we've got all this stuff to do, but I'm not running. We will keep incrementing every year, every month to get better and better and better.
It's all done properly as well, rather than like a little bit here and, oh, geez, we've got to go over there.
Yeah. And because we're a fintechy type company, still with the Santander wrap around us, there are parts which aren't as mature as other parts. So you have to kind of balance it off. It's like, one of my businesses in Brazil, which is now mature, I hold them to a much higher standard than maybe I would with a fledgling business in the UK because we have to get that off the ground.
But it makes sense, complete sense, yeah.
So
do you use the same when you're looking at FinCrime operations, like you're screening your transaction monitoring fraud? Are they used under a group for those companies? Do they all use the same tools or?
So it depends. So one of our businesses, yes.
Yeah.
So, but they're fledgling businesses. So we're looking at that, but we're finding that with that business, we're having to, do a lot of education, because we're trying to get the business off the ground.
Yeah.
So you got this healthy and sometimes unhealthy balance of, we need to grow the business. We need to grow it fast, but I need to have the controls in place and I can't let you grow fast.
Let's bolt you on.
Yeah. So how do we pull those levers? I remember having lots of conversations with, like Ned, Carolina, Nico, who's now the new head of FCC for Santander. It's like, let's build these kind of sandbox environments where we can test things and fail fast and do that.
Fail fast,
yeah. And really, really kind of prove to you that we've got the controls working.
Yeah, before we
and
roll
then
out.
you let us grow, and then you let us grow. And I use the analogy of like, it's like plumbing a house, right? I'm always doing this. And I remember sitting down with the GM. I said, look, you've built a house and you've put the plumbing in. Why on earth would you turn all the taps on at the full velocity and then find out you've got a leak?
And get the whole,
and then flood the house. I said, let's turn them on piece by piece, find a leak, fix the leak, and then let's move on. Yeah. Super frustrating for the business, but it's like how we have to work. It's like compliance by design, we call it.
Yeah.
It's like, you have to bring us in.
It's frustrating, but it won't be frustrating in 5 years.
No, and we're proving it. Like we've had, thankfully in Spain, we've had a clean external audit. We've had a clean internal audit with this new business. Which is
something, that's not...
For a new business, so we're really happy with that.
You should put that on your LinkedIn.
Yes.
Clean audit.
We're building the businesses in Latin America. We're now, to your earlier question, we're now looking at the more mature business. How can I use that as the hub for the
Yes.
other businesses.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've got a business in Uruguay,
Cool.
which is tiny. You know, we're
Yeah.
really trying to build it, and then budget's difficult, right? So what can I take from the Brazil business where they're more mature and maybe get some services into
Bit of
Uruguay?
a centre of excellence kind of model.
So can they do the screening for them? Can they do this for them? What can we learn from what was happening in Europe and give that to Brazil? And what
It
can
doesn't always translate, but there's learnings.
Yeah, and you know, like in the merchant acquiring world,
Yeah.
financial crime is financial crime, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I kind of sit there going, look, really simply, guys, if a criminal tries something in Brazil, they're going to try it in Uruguay, they're going to try it here, they're going to try it there.
Yeah.
So we have to be joined up across
And
all of
seeing,
those. Yeah.
So there's a couple of questions that I'm trying to ask everyone. That's more for my natural curiosity. And one of them I think you have a really good answer for is, what financial crime tech have you used or would love to use that you think is just like really awesome?
I spend a lot of time, when I get the time, to speak with Grant, a guy called Grant McDonald at Experian. A fantastic guy.
Yeah.
Anybody who's listening to the podcast, go find him on LinkedIn and look at some of his posts.
Okay.
Because he's really thinking about what data can we use in the UK to then get this perpetual KYC going.
Yeah.
Right. And some of the work that they do to look at fraudulent companies in Companies House, right, which we could be using in banks to do. So that's what I'd love to be using, is like something that takes away from, I need to give you my passport, I need to give you this, right? It can all be done with data.
I know, but then, I worry about there's lots of things I worry about, but this landscape of financial crime talent, when we start automating a load of these things, where are we going to find the talent if the whole of the first line becomes automated?
Yes.
That's something that I think
there is that problem. And I think the stuff that we're using now that I like, but I'm going to put a caveat around this. So like TM and the use of models. So it's these predictive models, whatever, fantastic, right? Because
if done right,
it's, we need to be using more of that tech to then start to continuously monitor and change the thresholds and all that kind of stuff. And I'll always say, like we're fishing in a really, really big pond, right, for criminals. So if that tech can help me get all of the really nasty fish in one part of that pond, and I'm going to catch more.
And then you can just go,
Yeah, and then use the tech then to look at these other fish that are outside.
Makes the net go,
But the caveat I put, and again, this goes back to Geraldine, right? So, and I remember somebody coming into Geraldine when we were at Barclays, and it was like, here's the paperwork for the model that we just built. And it was like this. And I think her answer was, what am I going to do with that? How do I explain that to the regulator? That's how your model works. Yeah. You need to make it simpler.
You need to explain it to her.
You need to explain it. Give it to me in a way that you can explain it. It's the so what type thing. And one of my big learnings from her is the so what.
So what's,
You're producing a deck. So what?
But it also really weeds out, do you know what you're talking about?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
can you take from those 3 pages, the information that you need to take from those 3 pages and explain it to the regulator in a way that they understand your business and that they have confidence in you, that you understand the business as well. Yeah. So that's the continuous challenge with this tech. Is like, it's great, but if it becomes a black box.
Wow, this is exactly it though.
Then,
and I think that is the, and it's I don't know how to word this without it sounding evil or mean, but the vendors, when they're selling it, they're not actually thinking about who's implementing and who's using it at times. If it's it's completely different if it's a brand new MLRO, right? You can't just plop it into something and say this is going to work.
And it's the add-on is the associated regulation as well. So like model management, right? So as soon as you start going into that, then just trying to get a model signed off is just horrendous, right? And then you have to explain that back to your business and say, oh, by the way, your cost of compliance has now gone up 50%.
Exactly. I was just about to say the cost is like astronomical. And for them, it is a cost because it's only stopping a fine that may or may not happen.
Yeah. This insurance policy you're buying is really expensive.
Really expensive. And if we still get a fine, then I'm going to be really teed off with you. So on the podcast, I've got 2 final questions for you. I'll do this one first. What is the most memorable interviewee that you've had?
The most memorable one, though, for me was it was at that time really junior. Yeah. Right? So we were building out financial crime operations in ORIP. Yep. And a guy called Lee came in, and we were looking for like a junior analyst type role. So I wasn't interviewing at the time. This was like the team were doing that, and they couldn't decide between Lee or another candidate. So they said, can you do the interview? I was like,
Fine.
I'll do it. It's like, fine. Let's do it up on level 30 in Barclays, right? It's quite an imposing level.
Oh, I've been, yeah.
And let's set the room up. So let's make sure that and this was an old friend of mine said, put the interviewer like next to the glass, right? It's just, so I don't know why
Spartan style kicking out
I've
the
never
window.
done this before. Right, how we're going to set the room up. The first candidate came through, really, really good.
Yeah.
Lee came in and he'd been with us before as a contractor on Barclays, right? And that was about his only role. He came in with a dossier and went, this is me. Here's the work I've done. Here's all the emails of praise I got as a contractor. This is what I'm doing. This is what I want to do. And presented it to me.
I love that.
I asked no questions. We just chatted.
And what exactly lit up inside you that you were like, yep.
He wanted the role, right? He came prepared.
He wanted the role, but not a role.
He wanted that role. He wanted that role. He wanted to work for Barclays.
Yeah.
He was passionate about it. I knew from then that kid back then, but
would work his socks off.
Would absolutely work his socks off. And now I think he's at Nordea now. He is smashing it out the park.
There's a little bit of a lost art form prepping for interviews, and I understand because people interview for a lot of roles now, not just the one. But it's very rare that someone goes and preps for the person in the role. They prepare for the job, which is super different. And it's so impressive when people can see that you've put some time and effort into thinking about why you want to work for them specifically. It's hard. We get AI interviews. We had someone, I don't know if it's recruitment urban myth, but we had someone say that they had a candidate interviewing and they had AI typing the answers and reading them out because it was a virtual interview. Whether or not that happened, I don't know. The final question comes from the guest before you.
Okay.
He asks, if you could add one regulation in, what would you add?
Who was the guest before me?
Can't tell you, it's a big secret.
One regulation in? I'd be looking more to take regulations out.
Well, that was the question. So someone asked him what regulation he'd take out and then he asked what you'd put in.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah. Wasn't very creative of him, to be honest.
No. Maybe not a regulation, maybe more of it could be a regulation, it could be a legislation. We waste so much time on KYC. And when I say waste, right, we need to do it, but
it's inefficient.
It's inefficient. I do it. Barclays, I do it in Santander. Barclays does it. NatWest does it, etc.
Yeah.
There's nothing pushing at the moment from a regulation point that's really helping anyway create a central KYC repository.
It's quite a similar principle to the fingerprints in the States for the building, for the housing benefits.
Yes. So, why am I wasting this money, this time?
But from a candidate perspective as well, like it's pain in the bum having to do it all the time. And it's interesting the government hasn't created something they can sell to banks.
Yes. So I know that I think when I first went into FinCrime, we started to look at it.
Yeah. Oh, there's been chat.
Yeah.
It's just who owns it because...
And that was the problem.
Yeah. The government should, because then as the bank, what you're getting is not sanctioned, but you know what I mean, is agreed upon. Yeah.
So, some kind of digital ID that everybody can rely upon.
Yeah. Because I think the challenge is the standard for your KYC at Barclays versus Revolut versus Monzo versus, they're all different kind of risk levels and what that looks like. But if there was a standardized passport, proof of address, whatever else. Yeah.
And, like the fintechs now, like your Revoluts and these guys are really good at how they onboard people.
Oh, yeah.
The speed at which they go through.
But they could create it. They had no legacy. They had to kind of,
So something like that's going to bring in more harmony between information sharing. Information sharing between the banks.
Open banking, but for ID.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. One more task for you, please. Question for the next guest. You can ask how is Jess so cool if you want.
No, that's too easy.
Yeah, it's just too easy.
Okay, if there was one thing you could tell your past self when you started in FinCrime to look out for, what would it be?
Oh, that's the best one yet. I love that question. Okay, on that note, I must say a big thank you.
You're very welcome.
It's been really fun. Thanks.
Thank you too.